Death in Jujutsu Kaisen is a topic that every single sorcerer has to become very familiar with, even from the first day on the job. When being inducted into Jujutsu High, Itadori Yuji was told that finding a comrade obliterated beyond recognizable repair was, sometimes, not that bad of an average day. And this holds true with plenty of the character deaths we've seen so far. Especially the more near and dear people to our hearts who obviously were taken out of the story way too soon. Too soon to reach their full potential at the very least. Satoru Gojo reminds his student Megami during an important training session that no matter how much a sorcerer tries to help their friends or save them, at the end of the day, the only thing every sorcerer can count on having in common is dying alone. Although, maybe that isn't true. Time and time again, we see Jujutsu Kaisen characters, even curse spirits, enter this dreamlike state upon death. And it can no longer be denied anymore that this entire quote-unquote afterlife that a lot of certain specific characters have been experiencing all stems from one core belief that everyone has shared in their passing. Nanami tells Gojo before seeing him off, if you want to become a new person and start fresh, go north. But if you want to find your old self and stick to your roots, go south. In this video, I'm going to explain why instead of dying full of regrets, almost every single character in the series has been able to pass on peacefully, all thanks to one core mutual understanding. Nanami, Nobara, even Toji, and more are all able to understand one thing that mattered more than finding a way to continue on living. If this sounds interesting to you, strap in and hit me with a like button as we get into this. Subscribe if you want more content, and most importantly, thank you for watching. Without analyzing this quote like a literary professor staring into a bottomless abyss, it's very clear the metaphor, while also being reminiscent of going to heaven or hell, isn't as simple as following a Christian perspective. We need only understand why characters like Geto, Nanami, or even Jogo would all quote-unquote go south and choose to leave their life as is, not striving to change anything at all and get a second chance. Eventually, there will be a trend that, if you don't pick up on right away, I promise I'll spell out for you. So to start off, Nanami is a perfect example of going south, and he's the one who even brings it up in the first place, so it only makes sense to cover him first. As we know, in the Shibuya incident after the exorcising of Dagon, Kento Nanami is dispatched in a quick fire attack by the cursed spirit Jogo. Already heavily wounded and hanging on by a thread, the monster salaryman that is Nanami manages to survive. And although he should be dead at this point, his half-lifeless body continues to walk the corridors of Shibuya, killing transfigured humans and thinking about the life he could have had if he retired and never went back to sorcery. Here we can start to see the resemblance of what going north can be interpreted as. The regrets of a sorcerer welling up as death slowly begins to take hold can make someone wish for something new, or that they did something different that didn't bring them into this predicament. Moving to a country with low cost of living, reading all the books he could have read, all the makings of a curse and negative emotions fueling up inside a dying vessel. But just as Nanami is about to meet the end and accept these regrets, he's met with the second option, the direction of south, as Hebara, Nanami's deceased childhood friend, stands before him. Nanami's dead friend points to Itadori closing in on his location and reminds Nanami the reason he returned to sorcery in the first place. Hebara, as someone who died a long time ago in hidden inventory, met his end because of a poor Jujutsu grading system and just plain neglect. But it seems, even in his dying moments, he came to the same conclusion he wanted Nanami to realize. Instead of wishing for what could have been different, look at what you've done in the time you had. Nanami, in this final moment, looks towards the student that he can pass his blessing onto, and trusts that even though he himself won't be there to see it, Itadori Yuji will take charge of the future. And Nanami entrusts Yuji with the past actions he made that led him to this point, and instead of attempting to carve an entirely new path in its wake, Nanami chooses to go south. Kugisaki Nobara, who, frankly, despite how long she's been missing with next to no confirmation on her status of living or death, does sit in the category of character that, if truly dead, would have chosen to go south. In her dying moments, remembering what it was like living in the countryside with her old friend, and then realizing all she ever wanted was people she could call her own, people that could, quote-unquote, fill her seats. Chasing popularity and the big city, in reality, Nobara was looking for a thing that left her long ago, and that was friendship. After having her soul altered by idol transfiguration, and like a ticking time bomb, a mark rippling through the flesh of her face, as Nobara returns to Itadori for what may very well be the last time. She realizes that her short time as a sorcerer is coming to an end, but she still managed to fill those seats with plenty of people. Regardless of if it took her this long to realize or not, she also wanted the confidence to realize those same people could move on without her. Verbatim, Nobara's life wasn't that bad, and she can die happy with the choices she made and the strong friends that make their own seat in her life, as opposed to waiting for her to make a seat for them. Characters that pave their own way, that don't need Nobara's influence to guide them. That's what she wanted all along. Even a cursed spirit like Jogo, in meeting his death at the hands of the King of Curses, is able to achieve some form of solace with the cursed spirits he leaves behind in the afterlife, feeling confident the person he left in charge as leader, Mahito, would be able to carry on their will of being true humans. Characters like Yaga Masamichi, who unfortunately, never even being able to see his son Panda before dying, went south, and is here waiting to see Satoru Gojo off in the afterlife. A character that, in death, left behind his curse of self-sufficient cursed corpses. A perpetual motion machine of life that could forever taint the Jujutsu world if lost in the right hands. Gaku Kanji, a higher-up, could have taken that information and ruined everything. But Yaga still chose to go south, dying without regrets and leaving everything to his son and the friend he trusted with his dying wishes, hoping he made the right choice. Suguru Geto, a character that came so close to achieving his goal and dying right before he could steal Rika and gaining ultimate power. Even though Geto was unable to exterminate all monkeys, he raised a family that will carry on his legacy and tradition in their own ways throughout society. He got to see a glimpse of the world he wished to create, as Panda and Inumaki risked their lives to save a fellow sorcerer. And even at the end, his best friend of all time couldn't even curse him as he took his life. Even though Geto couldn't fulfill everything, he felt confident leaving the world behind, knowing that the path he led created blossoming seeds that will grow on in the next life, even as the name Suguru Geto is forgotten. Surprisingly, a character like Toji Fushiguro even finds himself going south. At Toji's end, after accepting that his death was the cause of his own pride and selfish desires, he offers one small bit of information to his killer. The only regret he could have possibly had on his deathbed, the future of his son, that would now be entrusted to Satoru Gojo. Knowing his son would have the opportunity to escape the harsh reality of the Zenin clan was enough for him to pass on peacefully. Even when Toji is brought back as a mindless zombie, the knowledge that his son has the last name Fushiguro and not Zenin is enough to make the zombie Toji kill the vessel he resides in and return to the afterlife. Again, I'm sure he would have loved to have seen his son prosper and grow, sure, but Toji was no longer meant for this world, and at the very least, can pass on knowing his son's future is bright. If you haven't caught on yet, going south is entrusting in the path you've walked in life and the seeds you've planted for the future. Every single character we see be able to join Gojo on his final trip into the afterlife is a character that, instead of dying with regrets and wishing they lived their lives differently, can confidently say the lives they lived meant something and will be carried on in the messages and success of those coming after. Again, obviously, any person would love to live forever. Anybody would want to see everything out to the end. A common criticism that I've seen about Gojo himself not even having regrets about Megumi not being saved, or Kenjaku not being taken out of Geto's body, not being able to protect his students from the clearly unbeatable threat that is now the King of Curses unleashed. But think about it. Gojo raised the strongest generation of sorcerers in history. Even without Gojo present, our characters were able to survive the culling game and create a scenario where they got Gojo unsealed. Despite the roller coasters along the way, every student of Gojo, and even those he happened to touch along the way, rose to the occasion to save the world from this cosmic horror. And even without Gojo, they will persevere. Would it be nice for him to be there alongside them? Could they obviously use Gojo's strength in the battles to come? Sure. Does Gojo get to make the choice if he dies right now or not? Absolutely not. At the very least, on his way to the afterlife, Gojo knows every step of the way while he was alive, he lived up to his values and will be leaving behind a legacy that will carry on and accomplish what perhaps he himself never could. Defeating the quote-unquote strongest sorcerer of all time, saving Megami, possibly, and stopping Kenjaku's plan. And I think most of all, like Gojo himself even says, at least he didn't die of old age or disease like some loser. He went out like a champion, making the King of Curses sweat for the first time in 1,000 years. But in death, instead of wallowing in self-pity, regret, and becoming something new, a reference, potentially, to a character like Naoya, who in death curses himself, his weakness, and why he couldn't achieve his dreams. Ultimately becoming, as we know, a vengeful spirit that still, at the end of the day, lost the exact same way his human self did. But despite every reason telling him he probably shouldn't accept this death, surrounded by friends and breaking the one fatal rule of Jujutsu all sorcerers must abide by, which is they all die alone, Gojo Satoru chooses to go south, taking pride in the life he lived and entrusting the future to those that come after him. If it isn't blatantly obvious, from my perspective, choosing to go north is basically being absorbed by your negative energy and regrets and becoming a vengeful spirit, or at least fuel to the fire of curses in the world. Whereas, if a sorcerer chooses to go south, they accept their death honorably and who they are and were as a person, choosing instead to leave behind the future and the world itself to the generation that comes after and the people you are entrusting to leave behind your legacy. This was just a long-winded attempt to explain what in the hell Nanami was cooking in that Gojo airport death scene, because golly, the symbolism goes crazy. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, first of all, thank you so much for watching. Please hit me with a like if you haven't already, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and definitely check out an end screen video if you want to continue your binge. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.